Hello, everyone, and inside today's Locked On Canadiens, Marc Bergevin insulting Canadiens legends.
You are Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 1014 of Locked On Canadiens. We are your daily Montreal Canadiens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you get your team every single day of the week. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more, because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. I am one of your hosts. I am Scott Matla, and I'm joined, as always, by the active stick, Laura Saba, and we are available wherever you get your daily podcasts, whether that be Google, Apple, Spotify, or if you are watching us on YouTube.com as well. Thank you so much. I missed last episode. I was out of town for a family event, so Laura graciously had filled in for that with our 3 up and 3 down, so thank you for that. And Laura, it is Monday in Montreal Canadiens land, and somehow we still have plenty to talk about despite a relatively, I don't want to say quiet weekend, but I think quiet weekend is still maybe the right phrase to use here.
That and the Habs aren't playing till Wednesday, right? So there is a little bit of a quote-unquote lull, but here's a peek behind the curtain. I insisted on being here for this episode, even though Scott wanted to give me the night off, because I know what's coming. And I have some thoughts, but I think Scott Matla has some thoughts that need to be heard.
Oh, okay. So let's set the stage here from the start. Is that the previous general manager regime, Marc Bergevin, didn't seem to have the best operating relationship with the Canadiens alumni. I know a lot of them felt like they were kept at an arm's length. They were not around the team, even just randomly at games on a given night, unless it was like when they did like the captain's night where all the previous captains came back. They kind of felt like they were kept at an arm's length. I know Chris Nyland talked about this, I believe, when he was still at TSN 690 or on his own podcast. And then the minute Jeff Gorton and Kent Hughes took over, that was one of the first behind-the-scenes things they remedied, is that at games they brought the alumni in, they welcomed them with open arms to the game to celebrate, to watch this, and to be a part of the Canadiens organization. The Canadiens, a team who pride themselves on their history and all of this illustriousness, that's not even a word, but that goes with being this storied franchise of 115 years. You were one of the oldest franchises in North American sports, etc. And then you had a GM that kept everyone at an arm's length. And it's like, okay, I can kind of get it, maybe a little bit. It's dumb. It's not a big deal. And then it was on BPM Sports. And I do not actually have the person's name. It was Gilbert Delorme, who was a former player for the Montreal Canadiens. And there were some thoughts about how Bergevin kept some of the alumni at a distance. A lot of people know, up until his passing, that Jean Beliveau would be at every Canadiens game with his wife Elise in that seat that was always right at that same spot behind the bench. He would be there for almost every game until he got a little bit older and his health declined a little bit. What Delorme said in this radio hit was Marc Bergevin wasn't happy that Jean Beliveau and Guy Lafleur used to walk kind of in the same space occupied by the players on game day, whether that be the locker room, the hallways down there, probably visiting people that they knew or that had been around in previous tenures and everything else, and that no one in the organization really would say anything to Bergevin about this. And I can understand, that alumni are welcome at events. Maybe you don't want them in the space, but at the same time, that's Jean goddamn Beliveau walking around your organization. That is not some guy who played 50 games for the team in the 80s. That same player should be welcome back to enjoy the game in the alumni lounge with other players. Every player who has played for this organization deserves that. You are Marc Bergevin. You are most famous for trading PK Subban and throwing a puck into your own net and losing a game. You don't get to tell Jean Beliveau, a man who is a foundational piece of the Montreal Canadiens organization, and I don't say that lightly, arguably one of the two most important members who have ever played for the Canadiens, Maurice Richard being the other for reasons outside the sport of hockey. Jean Beliveau is a titan of the sport of hockey, a man that no one, absolutely nobody, had a negative thing to say about him. And you are saying you cannot be in the same space as this team. Are you out of your mind? Guy Lafleur, I know, had been critical of the team at some points. It was critical of Max Pacioretty, etc. These are still legends of this sport and of this franchise. And to treat them with such disrespect blows my mind. These are guys who have won more than you have ever won in your entire career. To not allow these players to be around your team at all and to keep all of these alumni at arm's length is ridiculous. It hits so much more because, again, this is a man who attended almost every game, that he was often in attendance with his wife, that was beloved. He got a state funeral from the province of Quebec. That's not exactly an honor given out lightly. A larger than life personality in all the right ways, and you were telling him that he cannot be around this team. It's, and I someone on Twitter said it the best. It's such a loser mentality. Are you upset that, these guys have won so much and you haven't won a damn thing and you don't want them around your team, that they might show you up? This is Jean Beliveau, for God's sakes, the kindest man who ever elbowed people in the face on the ice. It absolutely blows my mind that nobody said anything. If you are Jeff Molson and you had wind of this and you did nothing, you are just as culpable. That's a man who built the foundation that you are making your billions of dollars on. Are you kidding me? Unbelievable. Like, and what if other legends, were around the game as much? If Maurice Richard were still alive, would he have had this same treatment? They would have burnt the Bell Center to the ground if that had gotten out, that Maurice Richard was being barred from being around the Canadiens team by Marc Bergevin. And yes, that's a deep hypothetical, but it's absolutely what should have happened. It blows my mind that this happened, and it's upsetting because these are legends. They have now passed and, will obviously be there for eternity in the rafters and everything else. But are you absolutely kidding me? That's a joke and a half. And that actually, if all of this ends up being even as close to true as it's made out to be, gross. I don't ever want to hear a good thing about that time in Montreal again. That's offensive on different levels.
Among all of his faults, honestly, and Marc Bergevin had a lot, I think this one might be the most egregious because, as you said, these people are legends of the game. It's not like you're telling some schlub who played 5 games with the Canadiens in 1992 or whatever that you can't be in the locker room at the same time as the Canadiens or the practice facility or whatever. They Jean Beliveau can go wherever he wants. If a player is in the middle of a shower and still has shampoo in his hair, Jean Beliveau can say, "Get out, I want this shower," right? That's the level, that's the caliber of legend that he is. And it's the same thing with Guy Lafleur. And I understand sometimes it feels a bit petty because Guy Lafleur criticizes your decisions and your players and all of that in on the radio, and he doesn't care. At the same time though, these men were absolute legends. They were undisputed winners. And not only that, somebody like Jean Beliveau is the example of how to be. He's constantly held up as that for a reason. The amount of respect that he commands is based on the amount of respect that he's given. The amount of people who say good things about him it corresponds to the amount of good things that he's done for other people. That is who you want your Nick Suzuki to be like. That is who you want your Cole Caulfield to be like. That is who you want your Logan Mailloux to emulate. That's exactly it. And you don't want them around your players while they're there practicing or in the gym or in the locker room or whatever. They should be able to come talk. How many pep talks has this team missed out on if you don't let a guy like that in your room? You know what I mean? Like, especially in the playoffs, those long playoff runs, all those legendary stories we hear about. Oh, he came into the room, he tore the paint off the wall, and then they came back and they won in overtime or whatever. Like, you're depriving your team of examples, of inspiration, of a voice that they can listen to, and of people they can emulate on and off the ice. Like Guy Lafleur, maybe not off the ice all that much, but definitely on the ice. But Jean Beliveau everywhere, right? And that's the thing, like that just, it's emblematic of the kind of priorities Marc Bergevin has. And that's why this team doesn't have a Stanley Cup, even though they had a core that might have been able to win one back in, the earlier 2010s.
And to the credit, like they did bring in players like Bob Gainey, et cetera, for that 2021 playoff run and everything, but it's like, it shouldn't just be for playoff time and everything. You are an organization that prides yourself on your history. To, get rid of that and to, push it behind and make it not a priority. It's so offensively stupid, and I hate it so much. Obviously not much more has come out about that, but I'm sure there will be more and more stories. But we got to shift gears a little bit here. We do have a signing to talk about, and we're going to get to that coming up next. But first, right now, you can get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now, all new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. I know the All-Star game was the other night, and there were 210 points scored by one team because everybody shoots a bajillion threes. Honestly, there's so much you can check on exclusive prop bets. You can see live same game parlays. You can explore the bets tab to find something that is suitable to your interest, and you can win $150 if your bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/locked on and shoot your shot with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA, and us here at Locked On. We are back here at Locked On Canadiens, and we are slowly crawling towards the trade deadline. And I know that it is about, 2.5 weeks away at this point. I don't anticipate the Canadiens being overly busy. And on the transaction front, it seems now that they've signed Brandon Gignac to that 2-year extension, I didn't expect much of anything. And the Laval Rocket came in today and were like, by the way, we have a signing to announce. They have inked goaltender Kasimir Kaskisuo to a AHL contract for the remainder of this season here. He was playing on a professional tryout, which I believe is up to 25 total games that he is dressed for, even as a backup goaltender. And I think with his strength of play that the Rocket saw fit to sign him up, he maybe had a little bit of a rough go of it this weekend. Jakub Dobeš got the win against Hartford. Kasimir Kaskisuo lost to Wilkes-Barre. Dobeš took the overtime loss against words are hard, against Bridgeport. I'm sorry, there was a lot going on with that. But
what is
on
the
the
Sound
season,
Tiger, by the way?
they're not even the Sound Tigers anymore. They're the Bridgeport Islanders now because
I
they're
forgot
boring
about
it.
that.
Yeah, I don't know what a Sound Tiger is either, and that's that was wow. You brought back an old Twitter beef there. If Josh Goldsmith is still around for that. On the season, Kasimir Kaskisuo has played 7 games, 2.7 goals against, .923 save percentage, and he is 5-1 on the year. His last game was against Wilkes-Barre Scranton. He allowed 4 goals on 29 shots. That was his first loss in a Rocket uniform. He got a no decision against Rochester before that. So only 1 loss on the year. We also put up a .600 save percentage in that game, which isn't great. But every other game, he's been lights out. And I gotta say, he has been the perfect complement to Jakub Dobeš because they have a very young goaltender, and they gave him somebody who does a lot. If you haven't seen his YouTube channel, it's incredible, and you should check it out. A lot of behind-the-scenes stuff of how he prepares for games and all the little technical aspects that he does. And I think that having someone who does a lot of that technical prep work, not that Jakub Dobeš does not do that, but someone who hones in on it in such a way and can teach a young goaltender, some of the modern ways to prepare and approach a game, I think the Rocket have found themselves a good one. Plus, he's hilarious. I haven't seen some of his new ones yet because I am very excited to see what nonsense, because there's still the game where he got attacked by Brennan Saunier, and I cannot wait to see what that video is like.
I'm honestly, this is exciting news because for me, I know that one of the running themes of this season has been problems in goal and what the Laval Rocket are going to do about it. I didn't realize that there's so much nerdery involved, and we can go look at the YouTube channel. Like, I honestly had no idea, Scott. Why didn't you tell me about this before?
I swear that I have, unless you were out of town when they signed him and I did the episode. So, like,
Yes, that's exactly what happened because I don't remember this. Or it could just be my memory, as everyone knows. It's a little messy right now.
yeah. And so, my biggest thought with this, too, is that he is signed through the end of this season. There are 2.5, 3, maybe 3.5 months. Time has no meaning left in this AHL season. My thought with this is that they are going to use him in a role that they used Kevin Poulin in for the last 2 years before this one. Is that I think they're going to ride out through the end of the season. He's signed to a contract. They can play him more if they want to now. They're not worrying about running out of that contract and some other team running in and going, here's a contract, sign this, and he can break that PTO and immediately sign a contract. Any player on a PTO in the AHL can do that who isn't, in that draft ELC window for teams. And my thought is that they are going to then bring him back next season. They're going to use him as their 1B goaltender next year. They're going to have Jakub Dobeš again next year. I don't think that they will have either Evgeny Volokin. I do not think they will have Jacob Fowler here. And we know they're trading someone at the NHL level. And my thought is this offseason, they're going to get through this and they're going to go, here is a 2-way NHL contract. We're going to, have you play most of the time in the AHL. And God forbid that we have to call anybody up. We can call you up as our backup in that time frame and leave our prospect down there unless, they want to get the prospect some games on that. And I think that's foresight. The fit's been there really well. Based on everything I've seen, Kaskisuo seems to love playing in Laval, was excited. He took a tryout contract over offers from teams in the SHL, in Liga. He got a full, I believe someone offered him an actual full AHL contract at 1.2, and he still chose to come to Laval. It's a building block. It is foresight, and I think that's really important is that, and I could be wrong, maybe he signs with somebody else next year based off of how well he plays down the stretch run, but I'm looking at a goalie who's 5-1 this year with a .923 save percentage. Poulin played a similar role when Caden Primo was up getting bombed out at the NHL level in 2022. Kevin Poulin was holding the net and got them into the playoffs, and Primo came back in there. If Dobeš struggles, because young goaltenders do that, you can now rely on this guy here. I love this foresight, and my thought is they are going to offer him a full-fledged NHL contract next year. They'll have some of the spots there. Yeah, Lane Hutson's going to get an ELC spot. You're assuming potentially Luke Tuck is getting one of those. He might get an AHL contract, and then that. David Reinbacher will be coming over, and we know he will have his entry level. He's already signed his entry-level contract for that. I'm really, really interested to see, where this goes. I think this is perfect because now they've secured a stabilizing piece for this team. They're in the thick of it. The Rocket are in the thick of it in the AHL playoff race. They're in 6th place in the North Division. They're 2 points out of a playoff spot, and they are 5 points out of being 3rd in the division. There's a lot that can happen. They've struggled a little bit as of late, but with injuries and everything else, they are in probably one of the toughest divisions in the AHL. Every team has a winning record. Every team is 500 or better. And I've watched the 7th place team hang 7 goals on the 3rd place team. I've watched the Rockets score 7 goals against the 4th place team. Having a stable goaltending duo, I think, is going to be crucial for that. And Laura, you and I talk about this all the time. Stable for prospects is good.
Yes, absolutely. And it also gives them a little bit more time. You did mention Jacob Fowler. It gives the goalies a little bit more time to cook in their respective levels. It doesn't rush anybody because you're looking for your next number one goaltender for when your core is expected to contend, not expended to context. expected to contend. So I think that's really, really key. And it's honestly like it's something fun. Like when you are in the thick of the playoff race, and I know this happens every year, like it's so tight that it comes down usually to the last weekend or almost, you know? Like I think like having that push and having that possibility that makes the players motivated to push, even if they don't make it, is such valuable experience.
And that's the thing is I think with Dobeš and Kaskisuo, they are competitive. They're going to go down the stretch. They're going to push the Rocket as close as they can get to the playoffs there. And we'll hopefully have, a nice deep playoff run there with more prospects getting the shine, kind of like they did a couple of years ago. And speaking of prospects, we wanted to end the show. We've talked about something very stupid, something, fresh, that's new that's happened today. Spring is right around the corner. We know the Canadiens are going to be bad. Who are our must-watch prospects this spring and how you can tune in to check them out? We're going to get into that in our final segment coming up next. But before we jump into that, it is sometimes so hard to buy tickets for events. I've been looking for concert tickets in the spring, going to see Hosier at Darien Lake, going through all this. You often don't know where your seats are going to be look like. There's hidden fees with everything, and it's just a nuisance to put in this and then do this and do this. Game Time takes all the work out of that. They have killer last minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guaranteed. Game Time will take all the guesswork out of buying tickets. And the best part is that when you go, you see the view from your seat, you know exactly what you were getting, and there are no hidden fees in there. The price you see is the price you will pay for your tickets through Game Time. And with zone deals, you can pick the section and Game Time picks the seats for big time savings. So you can get great seats, save yourself some money, all with Game Time. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Some terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. We are back here at Locked On Canadiens. We want to talk in our final segment. Spring is right around the corner, like literally a month away, technically. And that means CHL, league tournaments. You have the NCAA conference tournaments, the NCAA Frozen Four. You have SHL playoffs. You have relegation battles if you are in the NLA for Switzerland and you're named David Reinbacher. You'll have the Gagarin Cup playoffs in the KHL. There's so much happening that there are so many prospects to tune in and watch that I thought, okay, who are our three must-watch prospects going into going into the offseason, or not in the offseason here, I shouldn't say that, going into the springtime. And I guess I know, Laura, you and I are going to be in agreement on the first one. It's hard to not want to watch Lane Hutson in Boston University. Like that, it's at the top and far and away. That is the number one prospect you should be tuning in to watch. If you
As
have
you're
ESPN,
saying that, I'm getting goosebumps.
well, and that's the thing is, it's like he's going to be in contention for the Hobie Baker again, and should be. If he's not, I'm going to be pissed. I don't know if I can say that on this podcast, but too late, and I'm not
You
editing
did.
it. Well, and you get a 2-for-1 because you can watch Luke Tuck as well at the same time in that, or first overall pick for the Canadiens. Sorry, JD, and sorry, Jay, for Macklin Celebrini. There's a lot of talent to watch on that team. And if you have ESPN Plus, if you are in the States and watching the NHL, because that is the streaming platform that it is on, you can watch Boston University games. He is often playing on Friday nights. I will have the Rocket on one screen, and I will have Lane Hutson on the other one, and I will usually relegate him to one of the screens that I'm not watching the Habs on Saturday. You are doing yourself a disservice by not at least watching some of his game to see what the hype is about. Laura, who else is going to be on your, if I'm forced to watch the Habs, I'm going to put them on the smaller screen and actually watch X, Y, and Z. Like, there's a lot to pick from.
Owen
Yes.
Beck, 100%. I think he's the next one to make that jump. So I definitely want to keep an eye on him. And as you said, as you pointed out, the change in scenery has been amazing for him.
If you don't follow Lauren Kelly from Elite Prospects on Twitter, she is absolutely in her bag right now, bragging about how good Owen Beck is in Saginaw. And the good news is They're going to go deep in the OHL playoffs, and they are hosting the Memorial Cup. So you will not be seeing Owen Beck with the Laval Rocket this year, unless the Rocket go real deep in the playoffs and Beck and Saginaw don't, go very far in the Memorial Cup run as well. Like, that's just truth of the matter is, and I highly recommend you get the ability, you tune in to watch that. Buy a package just through CHL TV to watch some of these games. Or Owen Beck's, like I said, he's the next guy to take that jump. He's someone that people have a lot of expectations for going into next season at the professional level. I expect him to make the Canadiens. I do, just because they're kind of thin on center, and unless something miraculous happens, you're going to have Suzuki, Doc, Jake Evans, something in there that I think the spot's open there for Owen Beck. To go back into college real quick, Jakub Fowler is one of my honorable mentions. I don't understand goalies at all, but I know Jakub Fowler has played, I think, every game for Boston College this year, and he's good. So you should check him out. I do want to hop on the other side of the Atlantic. In Hockey Allsvenskan and in the SHL, Patrick Bexell's done a really good job covering both Adam Engstrom and Philip Eriksson. Philip Eriksson's been absolutely on one since taking the step down from the SHL into Hockey Allsvenskan on loan. Potentially outside of Lane Hudson and Owen Beck, one of the hottest prospects in the scoring wise in the Canadiens organization. I would recommend talking to Patrick Bexell, picking his brain about what makes Eriksson tick playing in Hockey Allsvenskan, because he is so good. And Adam Engstrom is slowly kind of becoming like a forgotten piece with Ryan Bacher coming over. People like Bogdan Konyushkov. You look at Lane Hudson. You look at the development that Logan Mailloux has had, etc. He kind of has become the forgotten man and might be one of the ones that I think is out of all, should be making that jump in the next 2 years. And I think there's a lot of potential there.
I think we should have Patrick Bexell on. Dude, where's Mashar?
Oh yeah. Well, so I was going to get to that in that I had
that was
you
for
mentioned
one of our
Owen
listeners.
Yeah, you mentioned Owen Beck, and that absolutely set a bolt off in the back of my mind here that I went, Florian Jacki is having a very good, draft plus one season in the OHL, and that I'm still not sure what his ceiling's at. I think he might be Michael Pezzetta 2.0, which we love Michael Pezzetta. Maybe not always the penalties, but we love the physicality and that style of play. And then Philip Mashar, in that I know Kitchener is a very loaded team. And maybe he's just falling a little bit behind in terms of, he was red hot to start the season. And maybe it's just a little bit of a slump. He just turned 20 years old. He's got 42 points in 33 games for the Kitchener Rangers. He's still a very good prospect. He's missed some time. No, and
he's
the
just
people in
regressing.
front of him have all played 20 more games than he has.
Right.
He's missed time with, I assume it doesn't say that he's out injured, but if he is, please let us know. Just don't be a jerk about it. Sometimes that I admittedly haven't had a chance. Yes, we should have Lauren on at some point, especially to talk about all the OHL prospects and the 7 billion defensemen that are available to be drafted that the Canadiens should not draft. And the good part is that if you want to tune in to watch these OHL prospects or CHL prospects, Quentin Miller and the QMJHL as well, you're going to see a lot of top draft eligible talent here, especially in Saginaw, playing against a team like London, playing against teams like Brantford Bulldogs, etc. It's not just the Habs prospects you're going to see. Tune into Boston. Like I said, watch Macklin Celebrini play hockey. If you're watching Boston College play, admittedly, they're not on the Canadiens, but you get to watch Gabe Perreault and Will Smith and Ryan Leonard do incredible things. If you're watching Jakub Fowler, in the Midwest, Rhett Pitlick is out there. You're going to watch them play against teams like Wisconsin, etc. There's always a lot of good talent that you can keep an eye on out there. It's not just Canadiens talent. Let us know who are your three must-watch prospects going into this springtime. You can tweet us at LO_Canadiens, LockedOnCanadiens@gmail.com. Follow at The Active Stick. Follow myself at Scott Matla. We will be back with a game preview tomorrow because they do play on Wednesday and whatever other news has come. Until that time, thank you as always for tuning in, and we will see you all next time.